For a great cup of joe, there's one thing you should know. Your morning brew can also be playful. Buff Boy Brewing guys make the temperature rise, and you surely feel naughty when you swallow our coffee. If you want some real heat, give your mouth a fine treat. You will want some more, rest assured. Buff Boy Brewing, you can't get enough of.
It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble. Thanks for tuning in on your favorite podcast app. There's a lot to talk about in the news. Now, I don't even just mean the world events that are unfolding, right? The natural disasters, the corona, the floods, the this, that, the climate crisis, the meeting that all those world leaders had that really accomplished nothing. And then there's the other side of things where there's that whole discussion about fake news, right? Who can you trust? Do you get your news from Facebook? Do you get it from the newspaper? What's a newspaper? Do you get it from the TV? Do you still watch the 6 o'clock news? So today on the show, the legendary news anchor Peter Mansbridge is joining us. He's got a new book. It's called Off the Record. It gives some insight into what the world of broadcast news was like back then. I mean, he was doing this back in the 70s, the 60s and 70s, I think, right? And what it's like today. Obviously, technology has changed. The way that reporting has changed. The way people consume their news has changed. So it's fascinating. I mean, I'm a news person, right? I've been a newspaper columnist for 18 years now. I was a journalism major in school. So, I've done quite a bit. And I've always had a fascination with the news. And so I think it's really eye-opening when very rarely do anchors actually do interviews, right? They're the ones always doing the interview. They are always the ones that have the guests. They are doing the sit-down. So when I can hear stories from, I don't even want to say colleague because he's in a totally different league than I was or, ever will be in. But the book it's a page-turner. It's fascinating. If you want to know kind of what goes on behind the scenes for broadcast news. And so Peter Mansbridge is joining us in just a moment. And the last time he was on the show, we were talking about the royal wedding. We ran so long, but that's a good thing when you have somebody who's got stories to tell and is enjoyable to talk with. So Peter's coming up. How long is it going to be? Well, you'll find out with me at the same time. So the legendary CBC news anchor will be joining us right after this.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
His new book is called Off the Record, but when you're calling into the radio, I mean, everything's on the record, right? Legendary Canadian newsman Peter Mansbridge is joining us on the line. Hi, Peter.
Hey, Jeremy. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you. Well, it's been a few years since we've chatted. I think the last time was for a royal wedding, and you said that'll never last. Am I recalling that correctly?
Well, I was going with the track record of royal weddings of the last, 20 or 30 years. It hasn't been too good.
True. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I have to ask you, though, when you retire from the news business, or at least from the anchor chair, are there times that you watch a story play out now and want to get back behind the desk? I imagine, the stories of, Corona and the Trump years and all these other big stories. Does it make you want to get right in there again, or no?
Well, I think there's part of you when you're a journalist that's always chasing fire engines. You can't let them pass, even if you've stopped covering them on a regular basis. And, it's the same now. I mean, I don't dwell on it. I don't wake up in the mornings going, oh, man, I wish I still had that job. Because I don't. It was time for a break. I'm doing other things. I'm writing books. I do a podcast. I'm shooting documentaries for for the CBC, where I'd worked all those years, and so I'm still busy. It's just a very different pace, and I get to set it.
The book gives readers an entire behind-the-scenes look at, your life, and then also just even the news business itself. This is probably a difficult question, but what's the one surprising thing people will learn about the business and journalism that they might not have expected? And you can't say that it's you guys wear shorts and sandals behind the desk, because we already know that one. We know that.
Yeah. Listen, there are a lot of those behind-the-scenes moments in the book. It really is kind of the story behind the story. And in most cases, whether you're doing an interview at the White House or whether you're, in Afghanistan covering, one of that conflict, or in Iraq, or wherever, there are things happen that you don't tell on the air at the time because they don't seem that important. Then when you're kind of reflecting on your career, you look back and, those moments were pretty important, and they give a sense to the reader of what, daily journalism is really like, and can be, challenging, obviously, for the journalist, but it can also be fun. So there's a whole mix of, whether they're funny moments or emotional moments, they all tend to tell you something about the business of journalism, which is, for those of us in it, it's a very exciting profession. It's a profession that gets you, around, in my case, around the world, and certainly around the country, around Canada, for a long period of time. And in my particular case, it was something that I hadn't planned on doing. I didn't grow up saying, "Man, I want to be a journalist." I just kind of got into it by a fluke. And but when I did, I realized, man, this is really the place that I not only want to be, but I should be.
I mean, it has taken you all across the country anyway, just from reporting or from anchoring, and then around the world, of course, too. Now, being from Winnipeg, I was intrigued by that chapter. You called the city a disgusting and filthy. I'm kidding, everybody. He does not.
Don't get me into trouble.
Well, I'm going to get letters too. But I know the story. But for others, maybe why Manitoba and Winnipeg are significant to your career. Would you just touch on that for a second?
Yeah, sure. I never finished high school. I never went to university. I ended up at 19 years old working in northern Manitoba, up on Hudson Bay, in a little community called Churchill. And when I was there, I was working for an airline. I was doing everything from loading bags to selling tickets. And one day, the regular ticket agents, who were kind of swamped at the counter, asked me to announce the flight over the PA system in the little airport. So I did. And the next thing I knew, there was a chap in the airport who turned out to be the manager of the local radio station, who came up to me and said, "Hey, you've got a good voice. Have you ever thought about radio?" And I said, "No, I've never thought about radio. That was never on my wish list." And he said, "Well, I've got an opening. I can't get anybody to fill it. It's the late night shift." And we're talking a small station. It was like 50 watts. You couldn't hear it 2 blocks from the station. But that's where I started. I started the very next night, and from one thing led to another over a period of years and a lot of hard work, and that's how I got my start. So when I say it was a fluke, it was a fluke. But every once in a while you need that kind of a break to get moving and to recognize that you've got an opportunity in front of you, and you better work hard to make it happen.
And I certainly relate to the part where you say you had no idea what you were doing, because all this time later, Peter, I still have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm coasting along nicely. So,
yeah, that was certainly the case for me. I mean, literally, I had about a 1-hour training session, and the next thing I knew, I was sitting at the board where you control everything as the kind of the local DJ. Mm-hmm. You pick the music, you run it, you talk in between the records. This was the 60s, so it was a great time for music, but still, it was all self-taught. I wasn't very good at dealing with the music, but I loved talking on air, and so what I was good at was recognizing what was going on around me in terms of news events, and so I started a newscast. They didn't have one, and that's how I made my reputation. And people heard about me from outside of northern Manitoba, and one
And that was the 60s. People don't realize that you invented the selfie back in the 70s.
Well, there is actually a selfie of me in China in '76 on the Great Wall of China. I remember taking that picture because I thought I got to get a picture of me on the Great Wall, and so I turned my little whatever it was, little Canon camera around and took a picture of myself. So, selfies were around long before cell phones.
But, I mean, it was a gamble when you were doing those. You didn't want to waste all of your film, and you don't get that instant, right? You don't get that instant display if you're actually in frame.
Right.
So
you got to wait a couple of weeks in some cases to find out whether you actually got the shot you were dreaming of.
So here we go, everybody. This is how he prioritized using his film. Did I get the shot of me or the news event I was covering? There you go, right?
Right.
One of the stories you talked about last time when you were on with us, so I hope you'll share it again, is the awkward moment covering the Royals. Because I always get a kick out of news bloopers. Can you share that story? Because it's in the book. It made the book.
Yeah, it did make the book. It was Princess Margaret, the Queen's sister, younger sister. She's passed now, unfortunately. But when she used to travel in the 60s and 70s, even in the 80s, it was a big deal, unlike today where the kind of minor royals don't get as much airtime as they did in those days. But when Margaret traveled, it was a big deal. She came to Winnipeg, and she was there to open an art gallery. And so we decided we were going to cover her arrival live at the airport. And so they sent me out as this hot young kid from just come down from Churchill and moved to Winnipeg to do the live coverage. So I'm out there waiting for the plane to arrive, and I'd been promised that she'd be the very first person off the plane. And I was at some distance away, but the camera, of course, was on a close-up shot. So I saw this woman appear at the top of the steps, and I said, "There she is, Princess Margaret, what a historic day for Winnipeg, blah, blah, blah." And I suddenly hear in my ear said, "That's not Princess Margaret." And I realized, no, it's not Princess Margaret. She had kind of wings on the lapel of her jacket. It was the flight attendant, or what we called in those days the stewardess. So that was a bit of a blunder, and a lot of the people who thought I was moving too fast in the system took some solace in that to say, you got to hold this kid back. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Hey, I had a red carpet moment where the winner of a reality show was standing there with his wife, and I referred to her as his mom. So
that's not a good sign.
No, it was not. It was not good.
That would not have gone over well.
One question that I'm always asked, though, as an entertainment reporter, is, who was the best interview, and then who was the worst interview? And I always ask for clarity, because a good interview could mean that the person answered the questions and was entertaining, or it could be good because it was just so awkward and it went viral. How do you answer that question of your best and worst interview? And who was it?
Well, you've done a lot of interviews. I've probably done 20,000, so it's hard to kind of narrow it down to, was it Obama, was it Mandela, was it, Pierre Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, was it the Dalai Lama or the Aga Khan, or, sports celebrities, entertainment celebrities. There's been so many of them. I know the worst it was Margaret Thatcher. I'd interviewed her a few times, but in the last time I interviewed her in the 90s after she'd left office, she was selling a book, and it was just a disastrous interview. I was trying to challenge her on parts of the book. She kept saying, "You never read the book." So it was like the interview sort of went from bad to worse. That one didn't go very well. But, there are lots of good interviews. I'll be honest, I tend to, the big celebrity names, it's great to interview them. And it feels good to have added those to your kind of roster of people you've talked to. But quite frankly, they've all been interviewed 100 times before, so trying to get them to say something different can often be a challenge. But the people who really do deliver in an interview are basically the ordinary people who have some extraordinary story to tell. You're not getting spin. You're hearing the real deal. You're hearing it as it happened. And, whether I was interviewing boat people coming out of Vietnam in the late 1970s, or people who'd escaped the tsunami in Sri Lanka and in 2004, 2005, or people coming through the wall in Berlin the weekend it came down in 1989. All those moments are, seared in my mind as, special interviews with very special people, and ones I'll never forget.
One special person you're right about, Walter Cronkite. Obviously, he passed many years ago, but let's play along with this one. Somehow you two can talk today, and the discussion is world events and the news. What's your opening line to Walter Cronkite?
I probably want to know how he would handle dealing with politicians who lie, because that has become such a thing today. I mean, we tend to talk about Trump all the time, but he's not alone. There are many political figures, both in our case south of the border in the U.S., but also in our jurisdiction in Canada. And Cronkite had a way of dealing with his interview subjects, which cut to the chase and didn't let them get away with anything. And I would love to being able to have that kind of a conversation with him, because the times are so different. Politicians have always shaded the truth to some degree, but out and out lying is quite another thing. And we're living in an era where it's awfully difficult to believe what you're hearing, and because the lie has become an acceptable art form.
Well, I mean, if I can quote a legendary icon, as the old fart in the room, my tendency is to argue for a return to the basics. Focus on facts, not bullshit. Admit mistakes. Understand responsibility. Serve the people, not the elite. But that just may not cut it anymore. Too much has changed. So this book is dedicated to your grandkids. How would you compare the news business back then to now? Because they obviously haven't seen exactly what it was like decades ago.
Yeah, I mean, we tend to talk about, the back then as the golden era of news. There was nothing golden about it. I mean, we had lots of problems. Today has the opportunity to be light years ahead of any time in the history of the planet, really, because of the technology that we have available to us. We can shoot anything and anywhere at any time. There are no deadlines anymore. The deadline is airtime. So those are all the good things. The bad things are, dealing with information. There's so much bad information, misinformation, disinformation out there. And I worry and I'm concerned about the ability of today's journalism in dealing with that. Listen, there's some great news organizations, but there are so many different news organizations now that some of them really don't carry their responsibility in a fashion that would encourage people to believe what they're hearing or seeing or reading. And that's the big challenge for journalism today, is to be believable. I mean, when people come up to you and say, why should I believe what you're saying? We should recognize that we got a problem with that. So when my grandkids are watching the news today or reading the news, they tend much more to go to social media for their news, and that can be really challenging. There's a lot of garbage on social media, and trying to fit what's good and what's bad and understand the differences is a big challenge for readers. But for journalists, they got to be more transparent about what they do and how they do it, because people are having trouble believing what they're seeing, reading, and hearing.
Absolutely. I have to wrap this up. We're almost out of time. But, back in the day when I started in newspapers, the saying was, if it bleeds, it leads. You've heard that one.
Yeah. That was never really true, for starters. Listen, if we wanted to lead with whatever bleeds, you'd have an hour program every night with just ugly stories.
Gore, yeah.
Because there's lots of that stuff available all the time, whether it's car accidents or fires or wars or drownings or what have you. There's lots of material that's kind of out there. But responsible news organizations, make calls every day about what's actually responsible in terms of, telling stories and how much of that kind of stuff you actually need to put on. Listen, we live in a world where accidents happen, and and ugly things are available, but doesn't mean you have to show them all the time. So I've never been a big believer in the if it leads, it bleeds. That was just a different way of criticizing the news media of that era. Right now, the challenge isn't that. The challenge is trusting what you're seeing and hearing and reading. Is it real? Is it true? And how do you know it's true? And have they convinced you that what they're dealing with, they're dealing in a responsible and accurate fashion?
I've kept you 10 minutes longer than I should, but that brings up the whole other question of how do people know what to trust, where to trust, who to trust? What would your advice be?
Well, you've got to make that determination yourself by, deciding whether you trust certain news organizations or certain news journalists, and you'll make that determination based on how transparent they are in telling you the stories they're telling you. How believable is their information? Do you know where it came from? Are you seeing what they're saying? And, do you understand the decisions they're making in getting to the point of reporting? Why are certain stories on the air, certain stories aren't on the air? Why do some sources get anonymity and other sources not get anonymity? You can see how a news organization operates and then make your decisions about who you trust and who you don't trust. You have a responsibility as a news consumer to make judgments. You're not just looking for who's telling you what you want to hear. You're looking for who's telling you what you can believe is true.
Absolutely. Peter, it's flashing on my screen, wrap up like it's the Oscars, so I'm going to have to let you go. The book is called Off the Record. The Canadian news icon Peter Mansbridge is the author. Thanks so much for the chat. Love the book, and people should definitely check it out. Thank you so much for your time, Peter.
Jeremy, it's always good to talk to you. You take care.
Thanks, you too.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now. We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up the Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com.
Jeremy Bradley here, back on The Scribble. I don't know about you. It's fascinating. And again, maybe just because I'm in the business, but it's fascinating to hear the behind the scenes. And that's where I like when somebody's finally out of their job, right? Once they're retired, that's when the tell-all books come. And, for a news person who's literally traveled the world, right? He's a globetrotter when you're an anchor like that and you're reporting from all these different scenes. And it's fascinating to me. I mentioned earlier that I was a journalism major in school, and there was something, I remember the very first time that I was fascinated with news. First of all, I always liked watching the news. I don't know why, but I was that nerdy kid. Really, we're talking when I was in elementary school. I was watching the news and just intrigued by it. And the very first time was 1999. So I would have been 16 or 17 years old. Now, this is before the days, obviously, of cell phones, camera phones, and even digital cameras. I was on the bus going downtown. I had a gym membership in high school. I was going to the YMCA. And you can get yourself clean. You can have a good meal. Actually, no, you couldn't. This was really just a gym. They didn't serve food there. Anyway, my point is that it was the weekend. I was on the bus. I was going downtown to go do... I always did the aerobics classes because I was just that gay. And on my way downtown, there was a fire downtown. This building was burning down. And so there was something fascinating to me that I was just kind of like, okay, I've got to get off the bus here. Like, this is kind of cool. And I ended up going. I found a store downtown that had those disposable cameras. How old am I right now, right? You know, those you'd get like 24 pictures or 12 pictures, whatever it was. So I went and I just thought, this is wild. Like, it wasn't a huge, there was no explosions. It was just the fact that here's this fire that's like, we're just driving by it on the bus. And so I got off the bus. I go to this convenience store, whatever it was. I probably paid a fortune for the cameras. And I was up close. I mean, I wasn't going like right into the fire, but I was behind the firefighters, just like snapping these pictures. It was right beside City Hall, so I was kind of pretending like I was walking along City Hall or whatever, but I was snapping these pictures with this disposable camera. And to me, the fact that I was watching this play out and that I could capture these images, and remember back in the day, as Peter would say, when you got your pictures developed, it took a week, right? I mean, you didn't get them right away. And I was just so excited that I totally even skipped the gym that day. I didn't even go to the gym. And I ended up going on the bus back home. And I ended up buying 2 cameras. I filled the first camera up, and then I was like, I got to go get more pictures. Right? Now, obviously totally different nowadays when you can just go delete photos that didn't work out or whatever. I mean, I was just like, I need as many pictures as I can. I was taking them for no particular reason, right? I mean, it was just that this was happening like right in front of me. I've never seen a fire like this before. And I still have that photo album. I moved out of my parents' house almost about 14 years ago now. And I had that in a drawer. I had one of those kids' beds, with the drawers on the bottom. I had that photo album in my drawer. And I remember when I first moved into my house, I was like, well, where am I going to put this? I don't have a little kid's bed anymore, right? I've got a big bed. And I have it in my office at home, and that's where I kind of sit there and go, not that wasn't my first foray in news by any means, right? I certainly wasn't like, I didn't get my pictures in the paper or anything like that, but it was, in my roundabout way, this was my kind of first covering a news story. As much as a teenager could at that time, right? I couldn't go and all of a sudden, hey, look at this on social media. Here's pictures of this building. There was nowhere for me to share it. Nobody's even really seen these things. But just the fact that I was like, I'm going to get as close as I can to get pictures. How do I frame this? Here, they're shooting the water out of the hoses. Let me get a picture of that. There was just something, that was just kind of spectacular about it. And from that, I was hooked. I didn't go around talking to people, interviewing, whatever. I mean, they probably were looking at me like, hey, kid, what are you, I mean, I wasn't crossing the fire line or anything like that. I wasn't in their way. I wasn't obstructing their work. But that's what did it for me. And then from that point on, I mean, that's where I was just fascinated with. I wasn't buying the newspaper. When I was in high school, the newspaper was delivered to our school. They would give newspapers. And I would, every day in front of the office, there was the bundle on the ground. I would always go, and I'd be pissed off if I didn't get a paper, if I didn't get there on time. But at that time, how many high school students are sitting and reading the newspaper? That's just not what kids were doing. They're definitely not doing it now, I can guarantee that. And I'm in the newspaper still all these years later. But yeah, I was fascinated with the news, the newspaper. I knew because you'd have the reporter's byline, and then you'd have the photo credit for the photographers. I knew every reporter's name, every photographer's name, and I'd look at who took the photo. Didn't know them from a hole in the ground, I really didn't. And then I got a video column there with my best-selling book, and I was like, oh my God, now I'm working in this newsroom of the newspaper that I always, picked up every day. It was almost like celebrity status that I'm seeing these people. And then, full circle moment, one of the guys who was the police reporter at the newspaper for so many years lives a block away from me. How funny is that? Right? We were outside. I was outside, and he was looking at me. He's like, "Are you Winnipeg Cheapskate?" Because that was the name of my column. And he's like, "Hi, I'm Bruce. I was da da da." I'm like, "Oh my God." He's like, "Yeah, I live one street over. I've seen you walking by with your dogs before." I thought, "Wow, how funny is this?" So, anyway, my thanks to Peter Mansbridge. We're out of time. We got less than a minute now. My name is Jeremy Bradley. This is the Scribble. feel free to give me a shout anytime. It's always awesome hearing from you. My email address is live@jbonair.com, live@jbonair.com. Oh, they're flashing on the screen. Off the Record is the name of the book. I forgot. My thanks to Peter Mansbridge. And check out his book. It's called Off the Record. Fascinating. Even if you think that all news is fake news, you don't trust it, listen to Peter. He knows what he's talking about. He is the man. All right. My name is Jeremy Bradley. I will talk to you next time. Have a great weekend and stay safe, everybody.
Want
Bye-bye
more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.
If you want some real heat,